Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we are going to be talking about Valiant event quest and mainly just me being hype for something in the game because this is something that I was waiting for incredibly long time, and I generally think Kabam is making some very good strides in the correct directions of making monthly content potentially less grindy and more exciting. And just about everything about it looks great, so let's talk about it. First thing that I do want to mention is the fact that Gauntlet also will no longer require exploration of Thronebreaker. And you guys know what that means. That means exactly one thing. I can never, ever, I'm never gonna be again forced to set foot in the Thronebreaker EQ. In fact, let's take a look at the misery here, because last 6 months to maybe a year, I have hated every single time I went into Thronebreaker EQ, and I'm going to show you exactly why. These are exploration rewards. You'll notice there is tier 5 CC in it, no tier 6 CC. There are tiny amounts of tier 6 basic, tier 3 alpha. There's no tier 4 alpha, there's no tier 6 CC, not to mention any other relevant rank materials. In fact, if you look at the rewards of Thronebreaker EQ, not a single one of them is this generation, or barely even the last. None of them. Like, there's absolutely nothing that's current. There are no 7-star shards in it, aside from the ones that you get from duping a 6-star. There are no tier 7 basics, no tier 4 alphas, no 7-star 6 stones, and nothing. And this is something we were forced to do, just awful, in order to access Power Gauntlet. And Power Gauntlet rewards aren't like all that amazing for today's standards either anymore. There's like 3k 7-star shards, a bit of tier 6 CC, tier 3 alpha, tier 6 basic, and some relic stuff. The main reason why I always obviously did it was the tier 2 Ascension Dust and now the XP associated with that. And it just felt like such a bad use of time for the most part. And I love the fact that I never have to set my foot in that Thronebreaker EQ again. That alone is like a massive quality of life improvement, as far as I'm concerned. Let alone all the good stuff coming from the Valiant event quest. So first, let's talk about the format, then the rewards, and then we can circle a bit back in detail about the format. So, testing for May and June event quest. And this is another big thing. After giving us Valiant EQ for a couple of months, I genuinely hope Kabam has a very quick and smooth transition to having this be a permanent piece of content with maybe some minor adjustments, but it would feel so awful if it just went away. So, at the very least, for next 2 months, and then again in near future, we're gonna have 6 quests like normal, 1 path per quest. Love that. You know, exploring EQ was always tedious after you'd done the initial path or 2. 15 fights per path, so they are quite long. Fair. And this is actually more in terms of length than people realize or people think, because this quest is going to be made like Crucible. So class restricted, mandatory choice nodes between fights, so you have to use a different champion for every single fight. Any class for boss, open to all Valiants without record completion. And that 15 fights per path is quite huge. Because remember, Crucible kind of required from you to have a fairly decently big roster. Well, this Valiant EQ actually requires you to have even bigger one. Because if it's 15 fights per path, effectively 14 of whom you need to use champions from a single class and they all need to be unique. Which means, at the bare minimum, this will require from you, well, let's say 15, we're going to discount that. So 15 times 2, 30 times 6, 90 different champions ranked up. So, like 80 plus. So, in order to be able to do Valiant EQ, you will have to use about 80 champions, which I love. Because this is like one of the best organic ways how to incorporate, number one, roster diversity, and number two, you actually using champions that you otherwise perhaps wouldn't or hadn't used in a while or don't think are good offensively, and so on and so forth. And I think that's great. I think this is just about the best way to do that as well. Because when Kabam does these turn to your pain fights, and there are these very, very specific objectives where you either have to use like one of these two champions, or you're gonna have a fairly horrible experience when they say you need to use like a small mutant with this hashtag and this, defensive, offensive burst or something damage style. That feels incredibly forceful. That genuinely feels like Kabam is telling you, you use this champion, if you don't have it, you're screwed. And it's not a good feeling, especially if you're one of the people without the required champions. This is so much better because it's organic. You can evaluate yourself which champions are going to be good for the fights and just use a broader range of champions, but you will still need quite a few of them. And that leads me into the second point, which I love about this format. You actually need to strategize and think and look forwards, because you can't waste your best champions on easy fights and then have nothing left over. And as well, it genuinely asks for you to read and comprehend the fight, because there will be like no do-overs, because there have always been fights where you can effectively get stuck or it gets very, very expensive. For instance, if all of a sudden you need there's like a hazard shift node with some other immunity required and a fairly specific defender on there will not be too many options. And if you don't have anybody that's capable of tackling that fight in specific class, it can be hard and there can be roadblocks. So that alone makes these quests kind of feel more dangerous. You guys remember when we were doing Crucible and like you had to have the perfect answer for like the Gwenperion, or you just can't do the fight, or you're gonna have to waste like 10-15 revives. There were several fights like that, and I hope that we actually get some of that here, where you genuinely need to look forward and plan forward and think through the use of your roster champions. And again, for the easier kind of like more generic fights, you can use like more random scrub champions, like you bring in your, I don't know, Gambit, or you bring in some, whoever's that you haven't played in forever. And then obviously you save your onslaughts and sinisters and whatnot for like more specific fights. Love that. I think this format is great, and I hope the difficulty is quite decent for it as well, because the rewards certainly do seem worth it. I genuinely think they have actually missed out a reward or two here, that not all of them are listed. Like they haven't listed the gold and so on and so forth, but I also think they have not listed Tier 4 Alpha here. I find it hard to believe that this will have Tier 7 Basic and 7-star Signature Stones and stuff like that, and no Tier 4 Alpha Catalyst, as well as no Tier 6 Basic and not Tier 3 Alpha. So I think there will be some additional rewards that they just didn't include in the write-ups. But let's go. 150 units. Again, a fantastic change, because Kabam in the last couple of difficulty levels for the EQ typically didn't have units associated with it. Now they do. That's great. That effectively is kind of like free units as far as I'm concerned. If the Kabam is adding units in a piece of content that I always do anyways, it just feels awesome. And then we have a full 7-star crystal, 8,000 Titan shards, which is also a fairly solid amount. 25,000 Tier 7 basic fragments. Again, a fairly decent chunk on a monthly basis for, well, effectively we had none before. 2,000 7-star awakening gem shard. This is quite huge. That means every 5 months you get a 7-star awakening gem, but obviously this will serve as a top up and you will combine this with other shards. But yeah, the fact that there are 7-star awakening gems or shards, love that. Now we have 7-star signature stone crystals. Signature stones, those are in desperate need, in dire need in the game. And then we have some relic stuff, which I couldn't really care much about. But I do think the rewards look good. They do look enticing enough for me to want to jump in that piece of content immediately, which I will try my best to do. And back to the point that I was discussing earlier. Now I have a fairly large count, right? And even I noticed that immediately, if I'm looking at like top 14, 15 champions of my roster, that will immediately go down to 6-star rank 5s or 7-star rank 2s. It's not like I have that many rank 3s of every class, for example. And that means I'm going to end up using champions that I don't use generally daily anymore. For instance, like Scorpion's probably going to make a feature return, or that might be used for Sandman, or somebody like Spider-Punk, who's an Awaken for me. And I very much so look forward to doing that, because that does nothing but good things to you as a player when you refresh the knowledge of champions that you might have forgotten if they're more complex, or when you just flat out start learning, new champions for these types of quests, kind of, again, organically, without feeling that you absolutely have to, with it feeling like it's a very good, useful choice that you're making. And the same goes for every class. As soon as we look at the top champions in the class, there's still a fair amount of 6 stars showing their face, and there's going to be 7-star rank 1s that we end up using potentially, or 7-star rank 2s, and it's going to be such a wide variety of champions that we have to pick in order to get through this content. That alone is kind of getting me excited again. And the last bit is that this looks like a format that's genuinely also quite friendly for either guides or some spreadsheet or some other, breakdown effectively, and something that could provide a meaningful outlet for me as a content creator to try and help you guys to deal with this quicker. So I'll do my best to do exactly that. Obviously, I will be completing this live, and pending on the level of difficulty, I might even prepare kind of again, fight breakdown, which champions are decent options for which of the fights, and so on and so forth. Only if it's going to be fairly hard, but you guys will let me know about that, won't you? So either way, Valiant EQ is almost here. This is genuinely one of those things that I am positively excited about. Let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all been